Oh, Queen Justice, where are you? Did they beat you up or no? Lock you underground, take the crown away from you?
Oh, Lady Liberty, red, white, and blue. Did they take your dignity with their bigotry? Teach you that you're born to lose.
Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
We've had enough
of all the rules you break.
We've had enough
of all the money you make.
We've had enough.
No more life at stake.
We've had enough.
This is a proclamation.
It's been 400 years and we're 400 late. Together we stand from state to state. Going back in time won't make America great. We need justice now, people won't wait.
Action, no more distraction. Every step we take, we gain traction. If it can happen to one, it can happen to all. United we stand, divided we fall. Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
We've had enough
of all the rules you were breaking.
We had enough
of all the money you were making.
We had enough.
No more life gets taken.
We had enough.
This is a proclamation.
Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, just roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
We've had enough of all the rules you're breaking. We've had enough. All the money you're making.
We've had enough.
No more life gets taken.
We've had enough.
This is the proclamation.
We've had enough. Trayvon Martin and Tommy Rice. We've had enough. Michael Brown and Eric gonna pay the price. We've had enough. Philando, Breonna, George Floyd. What? We've had enough. So many gone. How can we fill the void?
How can we feel?
We've had enough. John Crawford, I know you've heard. We've had enough. Sandra Bland, come on and take a stand. We've had enough. Sean Bell, what the hell? We've had enough. Freddie Gray, did you hear what I said? We've had enough.
This is a proclamation.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. We always do the Healing Circle on Fridays. It's our affiliation with the African American Child Wellness Institute. And in the Healing Circle, we adopt a process called passing the talking stick. And we use that as a mechanism for sharing and respecting each other as we listen actively and not talk over each other. That's kind of the main idea. So today we're going to be using that mechanism. We'll be joined by others momentarily. I think we had Zoe a second ago, but we lost her, but she'll be back in a couple of seconds, I'm sure. And Lily is here, and Lily is our intern high school student writer, my niece, actually, my grandniece, who's been participating in these programs and doing some basic news writing and rewriting for Inside News, developing her chops and doing a good job. And here is also Brenda Lyle, who is a seasoned writer who is writing for Inside News and covering this and other of the Conversations with Al McFarlane programs throughout the week. Well, again, the question of the day is going to be how our community deals with drug abuse, drug use, and those things and treatment, particularly in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. And Zoe, are you there? I guess I'm trying to see if you're going to be there to open the conversation. Is Zoe backstage, Kelvin? Can you let me know? She was here momentarily or at the beginning of the show. And I do see one image. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not sure what it is.
There we go.
There's Zoe. And I don't understand what the image is next to you, but
It
Kelvin,
says Anita, but I have no idea.
okay, so maybe Anita's having difficulty getting her video signal in. And Anita, what you might do is back out of the program, then come back in. Zoe, let me start with you, though. You and I have been walking this path for several weeks now,
Yes,
since I've joined you and your team at the African American Child Wellness Institute. And our mission has been to talk about COVID-19 and the awareness prevention strategies, and now to talk about getting our people to embrace the vaccination as one of the strategies for keeping our communities healthy individually, collectively, et cetera. And we all have talked about that while we are so focused on COVID-19, the rest of our lives keep going. And the rest of our lives have to do with justice in the community, have to do with our faith. The rest of our lives has to do with other issues that we face, hypertension, age, right? Different levels of ability, substance abuse, substance use, emotional trauma, workforce considerations, social life. So there's a lot going on, and it seems to be that these things are all crashing in, piling in on each other, creating an inordinate amount of stress. But one of the things we want to do today, Zoe, is focus on this question of the prevalence of drug abuse and how we have resources or strategies to help people deal with drug use, drug abuse, and treatment, and how that is impacted now by the COVID-19 pandemic. So with that, Zoe, let me pass the talking stick to you. And if you would, start off by establishing your credentials again. It's always great to hear the power of the platform that you're speaking from.
Yes. So my background is I have a background in nursing as an LPN. I did that for 15, 20 years. Now I've transitioned into being a mental health therapist. The professional word or the license would be LPC, licensed professional counselor, focusing mainly on trauma and working a lot with women and children that are biracial. And so that's kind of my niche. But I work with pretty much everything, men, women, children, everything from depression, anxiety, some drug issues. I used to work in a drug rehab center for 3, 4, 5 years, actually. So I totally understand the need and the prevalence of substance abuse and how damaging it can be to families as well as the individual who's actually using the drugs or substance.
Talk, if you would, just about the prevalence and the pathways that people find themselves into lives that are abusive and dependent in drugs.
Yeah, so it normally starts out fairly innocently. We think, well, I'm just going to have a little drink, or I'm just going to have a hit off of this joint, or, smoke up a little bit. It's nothing. And what we're seeing is, well, some people had substance abuse issues before COVID and it increased. We're also seeing people that never really had issues with substances increase, specifically alcohol, because we are feeling more alone and we're home more, stresses of life or, increasing. We're seeing that our jobs may have been affected, so we don't have the money to do the things we normally do. We can't go out and relieve our stress the ways we normally have, like going to the gym and so forth. So it just kind of creeps up on us to start using, whether that's drinking, whether that's smoking more pot than you normally would, whether that's deciding, since I had this time off, I'm just going to experiment with this and that. And before you know it, it's encompassed your whole world, and you can't see a way out of the addiction, and you never thought that you would be that person to be addicted. That's not your MO. That's not how you live your life, but you're in it at this point. And we've definitely seen a major increase in substance use abuse, as well as people overdosing on drugs.
Mm-hmm. And what are the kinds of drugs people are doing more that you're coming across in your practice or in literature?
Yeah, so I'm hearing more about heroin or opiates. That's definitely a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Cocaine, things like that. Definitely alcohol is a huge one. Alcohol is probably the most prevalent because it's the easiest to access because it's legal, and people can easily get that just about anywhere. And people can go to almost any length to get it, even as far as drinking mouthwash, which is really sad and worse. So those are kind of the main things that we're seeing. And when it gets to be that dark and deep, you know you're in trouble and you need to reach out for help from other people because you can't do it alone. And that's perfectly fine. We can't do everything alone.
And so when a person comes to that place in her life or his life that they recognize they need help, how do they show up to you, to a counselor or a therapist?
Yep, they can show up to, so they would normally come in. We'd do like an assessment called a cage just to kind of see, like, do you need that eye opener in the morning? Do you need, in order to feel kind of balanced, do you need to make sure you have that drug of choice? Are you hearing from your family and friends? You're not acting like yourself. What's going on? This isn't you. Or didn't you just have a drink? Isn't it a little early for you to be drinking? You'll hear those kind of things. And that's what their, or family will say, I've got somebody, I have a family member who's really seeming to struggle and they're not really willing to talk. Will you talk with them? But obviously the only way that any addict is really going to get help is to own it themselves and to take that step, to come to treatment, to come to a counselor, to talk about it and to be open about it. I know we try a lot to have interventions and that helps a little, but it really, you can't push somebody to do it. You can lead them to water, but you can't make them drink, kind of thing. Addicts really have to own that they have an issue and that they have to take the steps and take accountability for, being addicted. And it's really hard and it's scary and, you feel like you've messed up, but you haven't.
Even the language sounds and seems harsh to me. How does the language, the description, the definition of the person's situation or problem factor in? I mean, when you
no one likes to hear addiction.
When you said the addict, that just jumps out me as an accusation.
Right.
And it's kind of a shaming word, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So how does that work? I mean, from the therapist point of view, is challenging people, helping them, a matter of being gentle, or is it a matter of being abrupt and in your face, or is it both? How does it work?
I think every therapist will kind of tell you something a little different on that. For me, I tend to do a little bit of both. To get them in, I'm generally pretty gentle about, it sounds like what you're telling me, and I'll repeat back what they've told me, that people are saying this or that they're feeling like they have to do this, and feeling like, oh, so you're feeling like you kind of are struggling with some stuff and that maybe you're pushing that limit of abusing some substances. You're maybe not quite to the addiction kind of thing, but maybe it could be creeping up. So I kind of make it gentle. And then once they're kind of in and they get it, then I'll talk about how it has turned into an addiction and how it's affecting their everyday life and that they're not the people they used to be.
Yeah, and you a lot more, aggressive isn't the word, but clearer.
Straightforward, yeah.
Straightforward, that's the right word, straightforward, and not mincing words, right?
Right.
But you have to get them to the point where they are able to receive that, right?
Right.
And not,
people have to be willing to understand that they have an issue and that they can hear it. Because if they don't want to hear it, you ain't going to get nowhere.
So the culture at large, from your practice as a practitioner in mental health and in counseling, are there assessments you can make about the culture that we are in that both support us and or cripple us, make us more prone to being in difficult either abuse, type situations, self-abuse situations?
I think so. I think so. I think our culture, it can both help us and hinder us, no doubt. We as a culture tend to want to be strong and just kind of push down all of our emotions and, think we can do it all on our own and that we don't need help. We don't need to talk to mama. We don't need to talk to dad about what's going on. And that they can handle the world on their own. And then slowly but surely find ways, I'm just going to have this one beer. I'm just going to have this one, shot. I'm just going to do this or just do that just one time, just to take the edge off. And it's also in our culture, in our music, in our movies, that these are all okay and that they can't lead to more addiction. Our culture does a lot with drinking and pot. Those are like the two main things in our culture. And while sure it can help you numb out, and right now we're obviously working to get it legalized, there are pitfalls to anything being legal. You can always overdo. And
like alcohol.
Exactly. And that we need to realize that if you're noticing it's affecting your work, if you're noticing your mind's foggier most of the day than not, and if you're not able to attain your goals, that maybe you need to look at that. And I think our culture kind of pushes to have some of that at times, to be laid back, not to worry too much. It will all work out. And that's not necessarily true. And we're stunting ourselves by thinking that it's okay to do these things on a daily basis, not on an occasional basis, but on a daily, hourly basis. It's not going to get you anywhere. You may think it's helping you just chill out because I've got horrible anxiety. Well, maybe you need to go to a therapist and talk about the anxiety or talk about the anger, because you're stunting those feelings with whatever substance you're using, like alcohol or marijuana or whatever. And we need to stop that stigma. That's one of the things that hurts us, is that you don't need to go to a therapist, that those are for crazy people. That's not true. Therapists are for everyday people that have everyday problems. It's not about being locked up in a mental hospital. And even if you do have to go to a treatment center or something like that, it's okay. You're you work on yourself, you learn a lot about yourself. Other people, you can learn to support other people while you're in a treatment center. It's not as bad as people think. It's not the scary movie kind of things where you're hooked up to electrodes and you're getting ECT and so forth. And just to kind of remember that we are a collective culture. We want to be together. And so us having to isolate is really hard. And so it does tend to lead us towards that path of using.
And then talk about, because I want to acknowledge our high school student Lily in the room today, about the impact of substance abuse,
especially
by
when
adults,
Yep.
and how that influences and invites young people to either
It does.
imitate or experiment or try. And what are the ways as a culture we can be responsible properly for ourselves and our families and young people? What do you think?
Yeah, so certainly, kids watch us 24/7. You think you're being sneaky. I'm talking to the parents now. You think you're being sneaky by, just doing it out in the garage or doing it, when you're out and about with your friends. I'm going to tell you, your kids know you're doing something because your whole being changes if they're awake when you get home. They will smell it. They will notice it in your eyes. They know. They may not know exactly what the substance is, but they know you've done something because you are no longer mommy or daddy that they know that's straight. And that opens the door slightly. That opens it a crack for them to go, if they're doing it, it must be okay. And we have to remember that we model and teach 24/7, 365 days a year to our children. So if you don't want your kids to do it, it's best not to do it with them. Not to do it in your own life. Kids, they notice, especially as they hit adolescence and teenage, you can talk to them about drugs and so forth and tell them not to do it. It's not healthy and all sorts of things. But if you're doing it, all that stuff you said about not doing it goes right out the window and they're doing it. So we have to be really mindful of what we're saying and what we're actually teaching. Words mean a lot, but they're not everything. Behavior means a heck of a lot more to our kids than what we actually say. They model what we do.
And certainly they're modeling the the culture that we present in our
Exactly.
music and in our movies and videos and even in our parties when we gather.
Exactly.
They kind of see what,
If
the
you had a
energies
general
are.
family party, you're drinking a lot, you're smoking. Your kids are seeing that, and you're telling them no. They're like, well, why is that no if you're doing it?
Hmm.
What's the difference? Granted, we as adults understand that there is a difference,
Hmm.
but to a kid, it doesn't matter because their brains are not fully developed into the 26 or 27. So there's
Okay.
a lot of stuff going on in a child's brain from birth until 26, 27, which I know a lot of us are like, what? I thought they were adults at like 18. Well, by legally, yes, they are, but their brains are not fully formed. They're still, it's not even just the hormones, it's actually shifting and different things are becoming bigger and smaller and all
Hmm.
sorts of different things are going on in the brain. So to remember that they are not as their executive functioning, their what's right and what's wrong isn't fully developed. So just even those little openings that we think, well, they understand it, they're 16, 17. No, they don't. So if you don't want them to do it, don't do it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Or if you're going to do it, be gone for a week, do it for 2 days. I'm going to be honest with you, do it for 2 days, make sure you're cleaned up when you get home, because they
Hmm.
will spot it a mile away.
That's interesting, interesting. Well, let me bring my niece Lily in. And Lily, our topic today was generally how this pandemic is dealing with people and the need for getting treatment for drug abuse or drug use, things like that. And I'm going to just ask you, as a 16-year-old, what discussions are in your school or among peers about what the society says about drugs, and then what the society seems to be doing, whether those things are the same or whether there's a discrepancy, a statement of values here, but a reality that's over here that it really makes you question the value of the statement. What do you think, Lily?
Yeah, okay. So usually at school we'll have like maybe a once a year kind of assembly thing where we'll talk about, you know, self-harm and self-abuse and drug use and how it can lead you down to a wrong path. And assemblies really aren't taken serious. They're kind of just oh, we get to be out of class for about 2 hours to talk about whatever we're talking about on that day. Um, and so it's not really taken serious in that time. And peers, especially teenagers now, are really into trying to do things or getting into drugs because they think it's fun or it's cool. And they're like, oh, well, I have weed, or I know someone who smokes weed. I know my mom smokes weed, so I'll get some weed from her and I'll sneak some weed from her and then I'll smoke it. Oh, it's fun. I've had fun with it. Do you want to try it? And it's just a domino effect of just kids going, oh, well, one or two times doesn't hurt, you know? And so when teachers are like, we've did it, we've had an assembly, that's all that we can do. It's more to it, because that assembly did happen. And especially since like COVID, half the people weren't there for it. Um, and even if it was a thing, you know, I don't think anyone really is listening or paying attention to it. And for them to be like, well, that's the best we can do. It's like reaching out is, better. But, that's all I have for school.
That's great. Let me go to Brenda Lau Gray as an educator. Brenda, as an educator and like me, a parent concerned about ourselves and our children and our families. This question of how the COVID-19 pandemic um, affects us generally, but do you have an idea or a thought about how the community needs to provide care differently or information differently so that people that are impacted and trying to struggle with, getting beyond addiction or substance abuse can be effective in that regard? And I don't know if it's a fair question at all or not, but I'm just throwing it out there for us to talk.
I
And
kind,
you
I
can take
kind
the
of think,
conversation anywhere you want to take it.
no, I kind of think the isolation is one of the major concerns. And there are a lot of elders who kind of got into the smoking of marijuana in college, and it kind of carried through. But marijuana has changed so since we were in college, and it was illegal, but it was different in substance. And I think a lot has to do, again, with being isolated, and then also with African Americans going through so much discrimination and not having an outlet. And like you said, with mental health, there was a stigma to it, you know. And so within the Black communities, when we were growing up, you didn't even talk about it. And there were no Black mental health clinicians, or so we had really no place to go, and few Black doctors who would understand the Black plight. So it was very difficult to talk about all of this. But my concern right now is seniors who really have been isolated for a year, who might not have hobbies, or their hobbies were cut off from COVID. You know, they would go bowling, or they would go to church, or again, they would connect with their families with reunions and that type of thing. And it's still going to be a slow process of getting back into that, and then finding yourself either taking a drink, or and you've been doing this for months through COVID, and then you have some that are not going to take the vaccine. So there is a concern there. It's different. And I know I've struggled with the isolation because my children are in Los Angeles and I'm in the mountains of Santa Fe. So I've struggled. And then we don't hear from people the way we used to. We don't get phone calls because people are dealing with COVID in their own way, and it's not personal. It just is what it is. So, and my students very seldom talked about it in the classroom. If they did it outside, because they knew I had good snippers, and I would ask a lot of questions because I was very in tune to my students. I loved my kids, and they taught me as much as I taught them. So I'm like Lily now. That's all I can say on that subject.
Well, that's a good one for now. So let's pass the talk stick back to Zoe.
Yep.
And Zoe, take it from there, and I'll ask you a question after you give a response.
Yeah. So just some insights that might be interesting for the young people that are, you know, dabbling in marijuana, and that it does affect your brain, and that as you get older, they're finding that studies have been done that find that your ability to handle stressful situations is lessened. So your stress threshold is lowered. So when you get stressed out, you're more likely to pop off. Your impulsivity, you're more likely to be impulsive. If you've started smoking pot before you were 16 and you do it on a regular basis, excuse me. And that they've found, let me just find that spot that I was just checking on. So it says that the changes in the brain's white matter, which helps enable communication among the neurons, correlated with higher impulsivity, in particular to those who started before 16. They have a harder time planning, being able to be flexible with changing things back and forth. So they get to kind of be stuck in patterns, or in whatever they do, that's what they do. And changing it makes it harder for them, as well as their abstract thinking. And they're more likely to have inappropriate responses due to their use of marijuana. So that's something to think about. And you can, stop smoking and your brain can repair itself, but that takes some time. And I don't know how fully that repair helps.
Okay. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. Our Friday program is the Healing Circle, sponsored and facilitated by African American Child Wellness Institute. And on the call today, Zoe Severson, who is one of the therapists at African American Child Wellness Institute, and two of my reporting colleagues, Brenda Lau Gray, who writes stories about these interviews, and Lily Rankin, a 10th grader who's interning with Inside News. She's also an actress, an accomplished actress. And I'll ask you to talk about your roles in theater before this hour is over, Lily. We're also joined now by Sherilyn M. LaChapelle, who is a nurse practitioner in two areas. One is, I think, the operating room, and now in mental health. And you can correct me, Sherilyn, so that people get the right description of your work and your portfolio. Good afternoon, Sherilyn. Good to see you.
Nice to see you. And I'm general surgery. So I'm in the hospital, clinic, ICU. I'm managing patients there. And I'm a psychiatric and mental health nurse. But I had sometimes assisted in the OR at Cook County Hospital.
Great. Can you aim your camera down a little bit? Just a little bit. There we go. Perfect.
How's that better? Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. So we're talking about drug abuse, drug treatment, how that's impacted by COVID-19. Any impressions, any thoughts, both for the caregiver, but also for the recipients of care and for the community? What complications are added to an already complex situation? And having described that, what things do we need to be mindful of, both as individuals, as consumers, but also as a collective, as a community, so that we support the health and well-being of the community? What do you think?
Well, I'm going to say substance abuse is already complex enough, and many reasons that people abuse substances, they're self-medicating. You add COVID to it with the isolation and the just total aloneness of some people who don't have others who live with them or who are taking out of their usual routines, because many people feel that they have to go out, have to go clubbing. They need to be around not one or two people, but a multitude to feel whole. So when this doesn't happen and they're alone, this is when they turn to other things to calm down, self-medicate, and that could be any drug. I heard Zoe talking about marijuana. There's something I learned about marijuana, not only reading but practicing recently. Marijuana can cause some gastrointestinal issues to the point of vomiting, dehydration, and it can last for days with horrible abdominal pains to the point that you need IVs and you are hospitalized for a few days. I forget the name of the disorder, but many people don't think that. They think that marijuana has no problems. It's just fine. It doesn't do anything. And I won't tell you how I got my firsthand knowledge. It wasn't me, but it was on multiple occasions that I've observed this and seen it and talked with colleagues about it. But it's no joke. And it looks like gastritis, but worse, until they finally asked the question, do you smoke marijuana? Now, people who use alcohol, the statistics show that during this time of COVID, there are a lot more ER visits for pancreatitis, things like that, alcohol withdrawal, finding people on the street having seizures and things like that. The other drugs, more overdoses from people buying things off the street that they think they know what it is. Even marijuana, some of it has this artificial fentanyl in it, and then they suffer overdoses. And cocaine, crack, it's got you name it in it. First time I saw this little piece of paper when I was in the ICU working, just picking up a shift, and they came up there and the police showed it found in their pocket. It just looked like a little piece of paper about as big as your finger. And they said that's how this artificial fentanyl comes. And they just put it in their mouth, on their tongue, and they get the drug. And this person was on a ventilator. So COVID has worsened the situation that was already a bad situation. And for those of us who don't use drugs, many become depressed. Mm-hmm. And some may or may not reach out to somebody by phone or what have you. And, some become suicidal. Or if they haven't been drinking before, this might be when they start. I'll just have a little wine, I'll feel a little better, mm-hmm. or a little something. And then pretty soon, and this has gone on for over a year, where people felt extreme isolation, mm-hmm. they begin to rely on a little something to help them relax. Mm-hmm. And I heard Zoe say, just 1 second, Zoe. Yeah. I heard Zoe saying about the how the brain, once you're off substances, in a year or more, the brain will attempt to return to normal. It will attempt to repair itself, if not continually assaulted by these substances. Go ahead, Joy.
I just wanted to also bring up that, and you can definitely talk to this, I know, Sherlyn, that while we're talking about all these kind of obvious drugs like, alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, crack, all those things, we're also seeing an increase in people taking prescription pills.
Oh, yeah.
And taking them inappropriately or taking them from family members. And that is equally as dangerous, if not more dangerous, because we think that because someone has a prescription or we have a prescription, that we can overtake them and that it's okay and that there are no side effects to it. So being aware of those things.
Which are the commonly prescribed medicines people are using to get
Xanax, so anti-anxiety medications. Okay. There's
any of the
narcotics, any of those. So Percocet, Vicodin, mm-hmm. codeine.
But guess what? There's some other ones that
there's even stronger ones. Absolutely.
No, less stronger that we don't even aware
Tramadol.
of. I'm shocked.
Yeah. Huh? Tramadol.
No, not even that.
Okay.
Gabapentin.
Oh, really?
Yes, I was working at a drug and alcohol treatment center, and one of the clients there, they get it for pain in different places, overdosed on it. She had overdosed multiple times. We had to call the ambulance. Yeah, they get a little feeling of high when they take a little too much. I learn things every day from people, who mm-hmm. use.
So this COVID is increasing those things of, I need to feel something different than what I am. I'm lonely.
Yes.
And I need help. I need something to take off this boredom. So we tend to go to our, drug cabinets or whatever, where we keep our drugs, and we go, what might do something? And it's sad, but it's true. Yeah.
Someone can go through theirs.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then you're hooked before you know it, and it's really hard, and it's really shaming to go, I did that, especially when it's prescription drugs or things that you think are normal or that you're supposed to get from a doctor.
You feel like you're not really breaking the law, so you cross that boundary in your mind, but you really have in terms of your physiology. If you're taking more than you prescribed and you simply rationalized it because you got it from a doctor, and that's not good. I was thinking, as you mentioned, one of the drugs, Percocet. I think I've heard music talking about Molly Percocet. Is there a song called Molly Percocet or something like that? You've heard that? And
yes, it is a song.
They're mixing with stuff. They might start with the Percocet and add a little something to it. Could be some angel dust, whatever you call it, some hallucinogen, so that they can just get to that next level. So it's shocking. I was shocked at how many things people were mixing.
Mm-hmm. And that brought up another thought or an image in my mind. Shirley, I was talking to, I think, Al Flowers, who was saying, he was talking to young people who were saying that they were skeptical about getting the COVID mm-hmm. vaccine. And they gave all kinds of reasons, like rationalizing it. And he said, well, let me think. You all are mixing who knows what. You're mixing this, you're mixing that, you're mixing this, and you're snorting it, you're drinking it, you're smoking it, you're shooting it up. But somebody says here is a shot to prevent you from having COVID-19, and we know COVID-19 is killing people left and right, and you saying you don't want it because you don't know what's in it.
Absolutely.
So that's the contradiction, because there's all kinds of stuff out there.
I had someone tell me that last week.
Did you?
And I said the same thing. I said, I'm confused. You are afraid of something that millions of people have had, and they've had maybe 0.005% of fatalities out of millions. And you're out here using stuff that every other day somebody is being resuscitated or taken off a vent because they overdose and they're brain dead. I'm so confused by that.
How can you get to that rationalization?
I think it's just glorifying it as well. How you said that is a song, Molly Percocet, and it was a popular song for like a year.
Okay.
And I remember us being in like 6th grade singing that song, and not really thinking of it as much because we're just like, oh, it's catchy, it's a tune. And for the stuff to be glorified like that, you're like, oh, you kind of take a step back and you're like, well, that is about drugs. And, there's so many artists and rap artists and they are usually African American that do sing about stuff like that because it is so pushed in that that like narrative of, that's cool, it's good to do, it calms you down, it's not that bad to do. And in reality, it's killing. So yeah,
I guess it's not different, Sherilyn, from back in our day when there were Rick James Mary Jane or something like that.
Here you go, Molly Percocet. I had to look it up.
Did you?
Put your mask on. Mask on.
It's for this time.
Okay.
Put your mask on. Okay, they're cursing. That's it.
Yeah. Boy.
So that song, that's got to be current because they're talking about put your mask on.
No. That was an older song. Mask on was, mask off was a different term back then. It was kind of just like,
knows you're high.
Yeah, it's like show you're cool. Yeah.
I wanted to add that one of my concerns are teen suicides. Okay. And I know that sometimes drugs are leading to it. And then sometimes they might help to keep young people from going over on the edge if they can't find a therapist or they can't talk to their parents. I remember, I think it was last week when Lily mentioned the fact that a lot of them can't go home and talk to their parents about this because their parents are overwhelmed as well. So you've got this, I know that there is an increase between the ages of 18 and 24 with suicides that have started occurring or was very heavy during the COVID when we really didn't have a handle on it at the time and no possibility of a vaccine that people could buy into. So we just have to be cognizant of what's going on with our kids. And one of the things I heard Tyrone Terrell say when Al was interviewing him the other day was the fact that our children need so many mentors and that the communities are going to have to start stepping up. And I remember Tyrone said, we just need to take a block, and if there are kids or if there are parents or families or whatever, we just need to try to save a block at a time. Because we also need to look at what is leading to the St. Paul weekend that they just had, and the violence. Are drugs involved in that? So it's kind of complex. And I think the fact that my doctor would tell me that they have not found any harm in marijuana so far, and I just heard Zoe run this down. So how do we get this information to our kids? I know down here, they've been knocking on the doors with the bar charts when it comes to the vaccines, and especially in Albuquerque, in the Black communities. Have you seen how many Blacks are dying? Have you seen how many are becoming addicted because of COVID? And it's like visual. Can you look at this and make some type of decisions? So I really think we need to find creative ways of getting this information out, not only about the vaccine, but where our children are. All of them can't come to African American Child Wellness Institute, but somehow we've got to educate the parents to be able to get and embrace our children at a time that they're so traumatized. Can you imagine the other day when you had a shooting in Idaho? You had a shooting some other place where a sixth grader brought a gun and just started shooting. And had the teacher not stepped in front and put her life in jeopardy, who knows what would have happened? Well, has anyone ever talked to this child or noticed that there were some problems? But then again, teachers are overwhelmed. We talked about that one Friday, where you got parents traumatized, students traumatized, teachers traumatized, and then you've got traumatized police officers dealing with traumatized residents. Mm-hmm. So how do we get the information and I think Daryl Gillespie was right when he said our churches have somewhat failed. Those and Marcus Bentley talked about it. Those church doors need to be open. There needs to be centers. There needs to be mental health specialists, maybe within the churches, where there's somebody that they can go to. So again, complex, but it is what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Most people living in Chicago, they're blessed. Trinity United Church of Christ is open 7 days a week.
And that's what we need.
And members who are psychologists, who are doctors, who are lawyers.
That's what we need.
From Chicago, Brenda? No, you're from Detroit.
I'm from, Al and I are from Kansas City originally. Right. Yeah.
But if you pull up their website, they've got about 70 ministries, and they're open till 10 o'clock at night every day. Nice. And when I was I'm still a member. I still pay, and I watch it on Sunday. But
I think that's great.
And my sister's a nurse practitioner, and she volunteers. They have a credit union. They have 2 senior citizens buildings. They have stores. They have farmers markets. They have for years tried to be everything the community needs, and now they're building a village with a school.
I think that's great.
And so I find it troubling that I haven't seen any of that happening in Minnesota, because we've got all these churches with professionals that should be asked to volunteer in their own specialty. Yep. And I mean, forget all the other stuff. Say, I need you for 2 hours on Wednesday. Could you come and, talk to youth? These are appointment hours for that. They've got, and please pull up that website, Al, because you could probably encourage some of these pastors to copy that. And they give away 4,000 baskets of food every week. There's pictures on their website with all of these baskets and all the deacons and other volunteers filling it up with food. It's always been like that.
Mm.
That's why
And
I still am a member.
you know, Al, we heard when we were talking to Reverend Babington, and he was talking about his Works United and all of, you know, the things that they're trying to do within the community and all of the things that the city is doing. But I'm wondering how many of those pastors have begun to mentor kids within the kids are the ones that
Mhm.
our future. And I worry about those 7 people that were shot the other day. And I'm saying, who has talked to them? Who has embraced them? Who has said, I love you, and given them a hug? Sherilyn, I remember the one thing you were walking through the neighborhood or something, and a comment was made that we were so afraid of our own children. And you walked up to this young man and you just said, you know, you
Hey,
need
honey,
to,
how you doing?
yeah,
And then he didn't say anything. I said, did you hear me? I said, how you doing? It was a group of them. And they were so shocked that
I
I
know.
spoke to them.
And
And I said, yeah, how you doing?
that stayed with
You can't
me.
speak? And they said, oh, how you doing, ma'am? All of a sudden they went to ma'am.
Yeah.
And they smiled. And I said, good. I said, because I want to make sure y'all okay. Nice to see you. And then I walked on.
Yep.
You talk to them like they're another human being, because they are. You treat them like an animal, they're going to treat you like animals treat animals. So treat people
Yep.
like you want to be treated.
I think Lily had your hand up for a minute. Lily, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, only a comment because I felt where Brenda was talking about the teen suicide rates and all that. Because I know so many people that have had tried to OD or have tried to commit suicide before. The last week I had 3 people that I had to talk to about suicide and had to give them a suicide hotline, had to talk to them about it, conversating with them to make sure that they're okay. It's a really big issue that, you know, we don't really talk about. It's kind of been like, oh, well, it happens, and then they kind of shove it under the bus because it is children. It is children and teenagers doing this kind of thing. And I believe the percentage of teen suicide rates between like I think it's 15 to 17 is 1 in 10,000. And that's insane. It's crazy how much it is and how big it's a thing it is and how reoccurring it is, and that no one really talks about it. And for me, putting it in a perspective of my peers, it's heartbreaking and it's unfortunate. And you know, as we said, they can't usually just talk to, you know, they can't just usually go to a church, or they can't usually just go to their parents because sometimes they don't listen, or sometimes they don't have someone to talk to. So being able to talk to their peers about it is the biggest thing that they got. And I'm glad that I could be there for them, but making sure that everyone reaches out and making sure that it's a bigger thing to be like, hey, you can talk to me. I understand where you're coming from. And even if I don't, I will listen and be here to reassure you that it's okay to not be okay.
That's amazing, you know. And so, Sherilyn, Zoe, and Brenda, I'm wondering if we are asking too much of Lily.
That's what I was getting ready to say.
That's a lot of responsibility,
Yep.
Lily, a lot of accountability, a lot of maturity. And that seems like it's almost too much for a 16-year-old to have to bear. Maybe it's not. And maybe that's part of the problem, is that people my age underestimate the vitality, the energy, and the commitment, the excitement for life that people your age have. Because I have two thoughts here. I remember being 12, 13, 14, and I remember being smart. And I remember talking about the world. And what I talked about when I was 12, 11, 10 was about global politics, right? About national politics, about local politics in Kansas City. And so I felt that, George Perry, Brenda, that's our principal at D.A. Holmes School. I remember him bringing some teachers from India by to our classroom. I was in Mrs. Williams, I think was her name, my sixth grade teacher, but we had all been studying different things to engage these visiting teachers with, and everybody that had a chance to present was prepared, and all the presentations were excellent presentations, but they demonstrated our capacity to understand world, global, cultural issues. My topic was on the three great religions of the world. So I gave a sort of a treatise on what the origins were of the three great religions and how they were the same, how they were different, and how they show up in our culture today. Sixth grade, So remembering that, Lily, makes me really understand that, 12-year-olds and 13, 15-year-olds really know a lot, but I have to balance that respect with what with what Zoe was talking about of brain development and maturity and power of experience. It's not just one thing, it's both. And you can't look at just one side and not the other. So I'm just kind of talking. And then Brenda, I want to say thank you for reminding us of what Tyrone Terrell said. And the one point he made, I want to embellish or build on what you reported. The point about everybody taking one block that they can be responsible for, and that's the block you live on. And
that's correct.
The point of it was that it's easy to say, oh, the world is messed up. And because it's so messed up and so big, and because I'm just one person, there's nothing I can do about it. So let me go drink my beer, have my wine, smoke my joint, and turn my back on the world. Not the answer. And the answer is not to feel like you've got to look at the entire world. You can look at the entire world, however, by simply looking at the 12 houses on your block, your side of the street, and across the street, maybe behind you across the alley. If you connect with everybody, every house, every child, every elder in that community, and that's a question of simply knowing them and talking to them and having a sense of what their priorities and their rhythm, their flow is. So when something's not right, you know it, and you can call somebody or go knock on their door. But that's down to reducing the world to what is actionable that you can do and that you can and should be accountable for and responsible for. So just thoughts. Thanks for bringing that up, Brenda. I'm going to pass the talk back to Shirley.
I agree with that, Al. I'm a type of person that I notice people and I notice changes in people. I have always, from being in the ICU, I've always looked in people's eyes. Why do I do that? Because usually their mouth has a ventilator in it. And their eyes will usually tell you they're in distress. And at that point, that's when you hold their hand and you kind of rub their hand and you kind of ask them, are you afraid? They can't talk, but they can shake their head. Is there something you need? And if they do, then I bring something for them to write. But oftentimes they're frightened and they just want you to sit on the side of that bed. Yeah, I'm unprofessional. I have sat on my patients' beds in the ICU and held their hand. And they calm down and then they'll kind of go to sleep after a while, but they're afraid. And it's important that when we see people, look them in the eyes, because that tells you a lot. It tells you when people are in distress. I mean, they just have a look. And then that's when they say, are you okay? It's okay to ask somebody that. Is everything all right? And they will tell you if it's something really going on. Even a stranger, they will say, because they are just dying to have someone to ask them. They are dying for that connection. They need somebody to talk to before they just feel like they're going to burst. I felt like that before. So you just need a few moments with someone, and that can make a huge difference. My neighbor's husband died down the street, and my grandkids played with their kids, and I knew he had leukemia. And as I would drive past, I would honk the horn and wave, and I asked, do you need me to pick up anything at the store? Would you like me to? I was thinking about making some soup. Can I bring some down for you guys? And then her daughter came and told me her dad had died. Mm-hmm. So then I, came to the door, rang the bell, had my mask on. Is it anything you need? If you need to talk, please just let me know. Just let me know. Because there are 3 kids and now she's a widow. And she's younger than me. She's 25 years younger than me. That's a lot.
That's a lot. Listen, we're at the end of our hour as well. This has been a good conversation. It always is. I think these are important topics to consider. And we're bringing kind of a practical people's analysis, but that practical people's analysis is informed by exceptional professional training from our practitioners, our therapists here, Zoe Severson and Sherlyn M. LaChapelle, and always great to hear the youthful vision of Lily Rankin and the incisive reflection and recollection of reporter, journalist, educator Brenda Lyle Gray. Well, listen, if you like this kind of conversation, we want to do it every week and expand it. We want to invite you to like the program and subscribe to our YouTube channel or like it on Facebook or social media. And this week, we've been able to stream the program live to the website of the National Newspaper Publishers Association. It's called Black Press USA NNPA. And what that means is that we simply can potentially broaden the conversation to people in different places around the country. We think that's a good idea. Lily, I did say I wanted you to talk about your artistic work, but I'm going to put that on the agenda for next week. That'd be okay? And have you talk about the plays you're working on right now, give the dates though. Are the dates set for your current productions?
Yes, June 4th is the first date for it.
Okay.
And there's a few other dates as well. They're usually on the weekends.
So we'll have time to talk about it in advance of the show, so people can come and get tickets and come watch you perform. Mm-hmm. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Al.